Hi, I'm Haydn Thomas. Today I wish to talk to you about the 3 skills that are required by business analysts. As we know, business analysts are the translators in organisations to take the information, commonly known as requirements, from the people who are requesting it through to those who can deliver it. So the role of the business analyst is to make sure that we get specific information and turn them into requirements that we can then use to be able to communicate, to be able to share, and then finally to be able to use as a mechanism to make sure that we actually deliver against what it is we're after. The first key skill is to be able to identify our stakeholders. Without them, we're not able to actually gather those requirements. So when you actually start identifying the key stakeholders, there are basically 4 different types of stakeholders that you can focus on. Ultimately, the customer, or people, the end users, the people that are going to receive the benefits or outcomes associated with you delivering your project. The third one is what we call governance stakeholders. These are elements where we need to comply. These could be anything to do with business rules, processes, legislation, regulation, elements that may constrain the way in which the project needs to deliver, but at the same time we need to be very mindful as a business analyst that we can deliver against those compliance issues. The third one is what we call service providers. These are enablers, people that provide the products and services that help us deliver against our projects. And last but not least is what we call our partners. These are organisations we're jointly engaged with who enable us to be able to deliver against our project. The difference between a service provider and a partner is partners we're actually contractually engaged with them, whereas service providers we could go out to the market and obtain anyway. Once we've identified our 4 different types of requirements, stakeholders, then what we do is just verify. Because I guarantee you, the one thing that's going to cause the biggest pain in your project is the stakeholder you forgot. So which way do you think you could go and verify that? Moving on to the second key skill is the ability to ask questions and be specific. What I find in most of the occasions is that the requirements are not in the detail enough to be able to provide to the output people to deliver those solutions and outcomes. So in other words, we're looking for specific information. As we know, there are 4 different questioning techniques. There are open questions, closed questions, factual questions, and emotional questions. What I find most business analysts failing to do is starting the conversation with an open question, such as, how do you plan on using the solution? What are some of your pain points? From that, we can then start using closed questions, which are trying to go A or B, yes or no, to help us clarify what it is we're asking for. We can then ask very much about factual questions in regards to, do you need this? How many transactions are needed? How many elements are required as an outcome of this? How are we going to measure the requirement? And then finally, the emotions. And what we talk about emotions is the way we frustrations, because they're what we call implied requirements. This is where people say, why do we always have to transfer the data from this system into this system? Isn't there a better way? So we can actually use these 4 different types of questioning techniques to become more specific. So finally, the last thing I want to work with is that the basis for all of this information is to make sure that we base it on fact rather than assumptions. Assumptions are things that we believe to be true. So the skill here is to make sure you document your assumptions. Why? Assumptions can turn into risks. So the 3 steps with assumptions. Firstly, document them. Once you've documented them, try and turn them into facts. In other words, move away from the ambiguity and work from it. As an example, we make the assumption that the resources are going to be available for us to deliver our projects, that the infrastructure is going to be available on time. These are assumptions that we all need to work with in projects because we don't always have the facts and we need to move forward. But using them as the foundation, as basis to be able to at least have them documented, try to turn into facts, and last but not least, if you can't do that, we manage them as risks. And risks are things that can have a positive or negative impact on our projects if they happen. So as you can see today, we're basically identifying who are our keys to project success, user involvement. We use the 4 different types of questioning techniques to make sure we get specific information
so that we can give it to the output people to deliver the solutions. And finally, we need to make sure that we have the basis, the foundations that we use to be able to make our decisions and how we can effectively use assumptions to assist in that process. So the question I wish to leave with you today, what do
you believe is the number one skill that is required, and what are the two things that you need to think that you have to do differently to be able to become a better business analyst after understanding these three skills. Have a great day.